When a business intelligence professional works on a project, they have to juggle many tasks. They apply effective BI practices and tools in order to make a positive impact. They engage with stakeholders and manage their expectations. They extract data, transform it, and load it. They optimize and maintain databases. Then, they get to begin the next exciting part of a BI professional's role: monitoring and reporting. These activities bring together all aspects of BI to produce a usable tool, visually represented data that can be shared with and understood by others. After all, sharing data is what makes it powerful. It's one of the key ways in which information becomes intelligence. Hello, welcome to the final course of the Google Business Intelligence Certificate. I'm your instructor, Terrence, and I'm a business intelligence analyst here at Google. I'm excited to work with you as we explore data monitoring and reporting. As a BI analyst at Google, I'm responsible for developing a deep understanding of the problems that my stakeholders are trying to solve and, further, leveraging our data to provide solutions to those problems. Sometimes, these solutions are simple data queries or grids of numbers in a report, but the best solutions are often dashboards with interactive visualizations that can immediately draw attention to the most important trends and insights. This can save hours of work for your team. As we work together through this course, we'll focus on building visualizations and reporting to stakeholders. To do this, BI professionals create visualizations and dashboards that monitor data over time and continuously answer business questions. Then, they present these dashboards to their stakeholders and improve on them as time goes on. This enables businesses to make quick, informed decisions using specially built monitoring tools. As a reminder, a dashboard is an interactive visualization tool that monitors live, incoming data. You can create a dashboard for a variety of purposes, but BI professionals mainly use them to display the data they've collected, analyzed, and tracked for a specific business purpose. In this course, you'll learn to design dashboards, communicate about their scope, then improve on the visualizations as business needs evolve. First, you'll discover what kinds of information you need to know about a project in order to prepare the right kind of dashboard. You'll explore how to empower stakeholders by designing interactivity into the dashboard. You'll also gain key tools and techniques to design dashboards yourself. First, you'll make a plan to create dashboard mockups. Then, you'll explore Tableau, a commonly used data visualization tool, which will enable you to design your own dashboards and presentations in upcoming exercises. You'll learn to make appropriate design trade-offs and whether to pre-aggregate your data in SQL. Then, you'll move on to designing charts and organizing them into simple and effective dashboards. You'll refine your visualizations to adapt to evolving business needs. In addition, you'll gain some great strategies for presenting to and communicating with stakeholders. Having clear conversations with users about business needs and project scope prepares you to create the best tools for your stakeholder, client, or user. And you'll definitely use these communication skills to share your work and launch your career as a BI professional. Once you learn each of these skills, you'll have the chance to apply them in a realistic business scenario by continuing to work on your portfolio project. You'll evaluate your stakeholders' needs and decide how best to plan, build, and iterate on a dashboard. So let's get going. I can't wait to share the exciting world of BI with you. Hello again. Welcome to the first section of this course. In the next few lessons, we'll be exploring the foundations of BI dashboards and how they're different from some other kinds of data analytics dashboards. We'll also discover many reasons why dynamic visualizations are an excellent way to answer business questions, especially when the answers to those questions change over time. You'll learn how a dashboard's interactivity empowers the stakeholders who you're building it for. Also, we'll get into the specific steps to take while planning a dashboard. To do this, you'll even get to create your own mockup, an essential step in dashboard building. And finally, you'll cover the kinds of tools you might use to build BI visualizations in a professional setting. If you haven't already, you'll get set up with Tableau, the visualization tool you'll be using in this course. The next few lessons will lay the foundation for your dashboard journey and the last part of your portfolio project. I hope you're as excited as I am to get started. You probably know that data visualization is the graphical representation of data. Maybe you've even had some experience creating charts, graphs, and other types of data visualizations. If you've earned your Google Data Analytics certificate, you explored many key data viz concepts, including accessibility and design thinking. If you'd like, feel free to spend some time going over these lessons again before moving forward. So, you have some familiarity with data visualization, but did you know that data analytics visualizations are not exactly the same as business intelligence visualizations? In many ways, they're pretty similar. Both are visual representations of data that communicate insights to the people who interpret them. They aim to share data in a clear and easy to digest manner. However, they differ in context. A DA visualization aims to answer a business question, such as, how is our company revenue trending this year? This chart uses only existing data. A BI visualization, on the other hand, seeks to answer that question in the long term. So, BI professionals might ask, how is revenue trending year over year? And what other metrics related to revenue might indicate an upcoming change in revenue trends? A BI visualization tracks or monitors data that is relevant to an ongoing business question. This means that sometimes it's built for data that doesn't even exist yet. In addition, the insights that come from a DA visualization would typically be used to make an important business decision. However, BI visualizations are used to make one decision now, but then another decision in the future, as the tracked data updates and lends new insights. In this way, BI visualizations are generally more dynamic than static, which means they are interactive or change over time. When creating a dashboard, a BI professional takes a different approach than a data analyst would. This is because their work goes beyond building and designing the dashboard to also maintaining it as time goes on. Here's an example. Say a BI professional at an airline designed a dashboard for stakeholders who want to monitor new airplane demand over the next 10 years. They include 6 different chart types so the users can easily identify important metrics and KPIs related to consumers' travel frequency, the useful product life cycle of airplanes, demand for new crafts, and lots more. But perhaps something in the industry changes. The stakeholders might ask for new KPIs, different arrangement of visual elements, or similar updates. It's the BI professional's job to interpret their requests, determine if they're reasonable and feasible, and implement them into the dash. In this way, the dashboard keeps informing decisions, solving problems, and answering key questions for the long term. As you've learned, the ability to proactively respond to change and remain continuously useful is an essential part of BI. Next time, we'll go deeper into empowering stakeholders with data visualizations. As a BI professional, you will build tools that monitor and showcase important business data. As you're learning, the main purpose of tracking this data and building it into a dashboard is to enable stakeholders to answer their own data questions. At its core, a dashboard is a tool. For example, a dashboard that tracks annual revenue can tell you a story about how a small business went viral overnight. Or a dashboard monitoring the global marketplace can tell you that competition has increased in a particular market. The stories told by dashboards provide important information about what's currently happening with the company's data. Then, these stories provide opportunities for action. Maybe a company facing new competition now knows that it needs to introduce a new product line or improve an existing one. And visualizations are more helpful than just raw data because they help make the data insights far more clear and understandable. Sometimes, a significant trend might be nearly impossible to identify without a visualization. For example, in this spreadsheet about a company's international sales, all of the data is here, but its meaning is not immediately apparent. On the other hand, a dashboard about this data can much more clearly represent what's going on. After all, the primary purpose of a dashboard isn't just to be aesthetically pleasing, it's to answer a question or solve a problem. Imagine that you need to find a company's total sales for the year 2019. This chart from a dashboard answers that question very simply. You can easily find the data point for the total of 2019 sales. Dashboards are also interactive, making them extremely flexible tools that put the power in the user's hands. A dashboard doesn't answer one question and then lose its usefulness. Instead, it can answer multiple questions, based on what the user is searching for and how it's being used. So, going back to our example, maybe a stakeholder wants to use the dashboard to find out which country has the greatest total sales across all years. They can simply change the setting from within the dashboard environment to focus on different data or the same data in a different way. By creating and maintaining a multifunctional tool, BI professionals can reduce the amount of work people need to do. Instead of building 10 separate charts to answer 10 questions, just one interactive dashboard does the job. As you know, your stakeholders use the tools you build to make informed business decisions. So your role as a BI professional will rarely involve interpreting the data that your dashboard displays. Instead, you'll create a dash that empowers users to interpret the data on their own. So, you'll determine what the dashboard needs to do, build the appropriate tool, and maintain and improve on it over time. Coming up, we'll investigate more about stakeholder goals and create a mock-up from a dashboard plan. You'll soon be on your way to planning for the perfect dash. Like any important professional endeavor, dashboards require a lot of planning to get right. They also require a lot of collaboration. You've already worked on many aspects of BI planning, including a stakeholder requirements document, a project requirements document, and a strategy document. In this video, we're going to learn more about planning and gain some strategies for dashboards specifically. Typically, a BI professional works with their stakeholders to figure out what needs to be included in the dash. The process usually begins with the stakeholder describing their needs. For example, a sales or marketing executive may want a dashboard that tracks customer spending habits. They could ask for visualizations that demonstrate how often customers buy the same product again or how much revenue increases at peak shopping times, such as during certain holidays. After stakeholders explain their needs, a BI professional follows up with their own questions. This helps determine the level of detail involved. Some questions I like to ask are, what's the dashboard supposed to do? And what KPIs and dimensions is it tracking? It's helpful to also ask who the dashboard is being built for. Is it someone who needs the most specific level of detail, or someone who just needs high-level insights? Lastly, the BI professional must consider where to find the necessary data and the timeline it should represent. Of course, there are a limitless number of questions that can help shed light about any given project. As you continue to gain context, you might identify some gaps in your understanding or find some pain points that you and even the stakeholders weren't expecting. Following up on these new discoveries will help you ensure you address your stakeholders' needs more directly and create an effective tool for them to use. In addition to asking questions, many BI professionals will observe their stakeholders at work. This can be actually sitting alongside them at their workstations or sharing their screens in order to demonstrate a particular workflow. This is extremely helpful because often a stakeholder is so close to their own processes that they won't notice where or how a dashboard can help them. This exercise requires time, but it yields a ton of great insights. Likewise, it's valuable to iterate alongside your stakeholders. We talk about iteration a lot in BI. As a refresher, this just means repeating a procedure over and over again in order to keep getting closer to the desired result. And as you've learned, desired results are always changing, which is why BI professionals iterate all the time. The first step of the dashboard iteration process is to create a low-fidelity mockup. A low-fidelity mockup is a simple draft of a visualization that is used for planning a dashboard and evaluating its progress. It may be a pen and paper model of how it's organized, or a dashboard with a very limited amount of data. The stakeholder provides feedback, which you act on. Sharing a low-fidelity mockup is an excellent way to include your stakeholders and make the most of your collaboration. Also, it's very effective at avoiding potential errors. If you make an assumption that turns out to be incorrect, the mockup can help you and your users identify it and implement the necessary fixes. Soon, we'll explore even more about dashboard planning. After all, the best way to reach a goal is with a clear and thoughtful plan. If you don't properly plan before creating a dashboard, it's only common sense that you might make mistakes. But what kinds of problems can occur? In this video, we will explore some of the most common consequences of not adequately planning for a dashboard. There are three main types of dashboard issues that BI professionals encounter. Put simply, they are data problems, tool problems, and audience problems. Let's consider each of these more closely. First, when it comes to a BI dashboard, a data problem is an issue caused by the data being used that's in the dashboard. Maybe you've included more data than you need. Just as you've discovered with pipelines, this can cause dashboards to run slowly. On the other hand, if you don't include enough data, you might be missing crucial information that your stakeholders could really benefit from having. Perhaps you incorporated incorrect data sets or data from the wrong time period. This can cause your stakeholders to come to inaccurate conclusions. And if you don't understand what data is actually available, you might waste time and resources trying to obtain data that isn't there. Avoiding data problems requires you to be very specific before you begin building any BI tool. Some key points to consider include making sure you know what data should be displayed and where that data should come from. Also, set up a plan for how you will access the data and import it into your dashboard. And confirm that you have permission to access the data and you know what file type you'll use. Now, let's explore tool problems. These are dashboard issues involving the hardware or software being used. The most basic type of tool problem is simply selecting the wrong tool. As you know, each company uses particular coding languages and data visualization programs. And in most cases, the BI professional must use their organization's preferred tools. As you've been learning, many of the skills you apply to one tool easily transfers to another, but you still need to understand how these tools are different so you can navigate them effectively. Other tool problems relate to processing limitations. Some programs or servers may become overwhelmed if they're tracking too many KPIs. Sometimes they can even crash if too many people are making edits to the same visualization. If you run into a hardware limitation during your building phase, you may need to reduce the project scope or find a more creative solution, which you will learn more about later on in this course. Okay, finally, we have audience problems. These are dashboard issues caused by failing to adequately consider the needs of the user. For instance, imagine you're tasked with creating a dashboard for a company's human resources team. The tool needs to keep track of how many employees the company has hired or will hire and how many have resigned. If your dashboard also includes financial and operational metrics, these won't be relevant to your audience and may clutter the dash, causing complexity or confusion, which means your tool won't be as helpful to stakeholders as it could be. Another kind of audience problem concerns privacy and permissions. It's your responsibility to ensure that your dashboard only includes information that the users are permitted to access, rather than something sensitive or private. It's especially important to consider the needs of different audiences when you're building a single dashboard for multiple users. For example, say you're creating a dash to be used by a company's marketing team across Africa, Asia, and Europe, as well as by the Chief Marketing Officer. The CMO would need data about all regions, where the regional teams may only require access to their own data. In this case, you would configure the privacy settings to account for multiple permissions. Later on, you'll learn more about how privacy permissions work. But for now, you've explored some of the most common problems that occur when building dashboards. More importantly, you understand how to avoid them, and being proactive is an essential skill for any BI professional. You've been investigating various BI visualization tools and how they may have different user interfaces, or UIs, and work streams. In this video, we'll learn more about the different tools you might use to visualize data and create dashboards, as well as how your skills in one program can transfer to another. As you know, BI visualization tools enable you to visually represent the data you collect and prepare for a dashboard. With some programs, you can transform data and make a dashboard using the same software. Others are specifically dedicated to visualization and have limited functionality for transformation. In this course, we'll be working in Tableau most often. It's a powerful visual analytics platform that enables you to create BI dashboards and data visualizations. Tableau is used by many industry experts and has a straightforward and friendly UI. If you earned your Google Data Analytics certificate, you already have some experience with Tableau. To prepare for what's to come, feel free to take some time to review those lessons. Some other programs you might use as a BI professional include Google Data Studio, Looker, and Power BI. Let's explore them briefly now. Google Data Studio is a reporting tool that's all about simplicity. It focuses more on reporting than data transformation, but it can still be used to create a variety of dashboards. Looker is a data aggregation and dashboarding tool similar to Tableau. It uses its own modeling language called LookML. And Power BI is Microsoft's dashboarding and reporting tool, which is similar to Tableau. Some of its functions may offer different capabilities depending on the volume of data you're working with. These programs behave fairly similarly. You may use any of these tools to complete the activities in this course, but keep in mind that most of the instructions will be tailored to Tableau's UI and functionality. If you do choose to work in another program, you may need to take additional or different steps to finish the tasks. To start, in the next activity, you will set up your Tableau public account. Tableau Public is a free platform to explore, create, and publicly share data visualizations online. You can use it to perform most of Tableau's functions on any operating system at no cost. The second activity is optional. In it, you can download the Tableau Public Desktop Edition application to your computer. While in-browser functionality is nearly identical, some may prefer the desktop version. Because it is only available with Windows and Mac OS, it is not required to complete this course. Tableau Public Desktop does have functions that the in-browser Tableau Public does not. For example, it enables you to use Tableau without an internet connection. But again, it's not required to complete the activities in this course. One important thing to keep in mind is that these programs are constantly being updated and refined. They might appear differently as changes are made. If this happens, take the opportunity to troubleshoot the issue yourself. This is excellent practice for actual business scenarios you'll encounter a lot as a BI professional. You can hone your skills as a data detective as you practice the art of trial and error. And if you truly get stuck, you can always refer to the program's help resources, our forums, and the program's customer support. One last thing. When you create your Tableau public account, remember that potential employers can view your public profile as part of your work portfolio. This is helpful to remember after you've completed this program. Tableau also has a feature where you can let potential employers know you're available for hire. This can be enabled by checking the Available for Hire box on your Tableau public profile. Throughout this course, you've been discovering so much about the world of BI. You now know how interactive BI visualizations empower stakeholders to make decisions. You've explored how to effectively plan for a dashboard, as well as how to build a low-fidelity mockup. You've also set up the tools you will use to build dynamic visualizations. Once you're in a professional setting, you'll be able to use these experiences to plan for excellent dashboards. But for now, it's time to turn your attention to the next assessment. As a reminder, these challenges are here to help you evaluate your learning and progress throughout the course. Think of them as an essential measurement of your professional growth. Take some time to review any material you like, including the latest glossary, which is full of new vocabulary definitions and concepts. Good luck. You're going to do great. Imagine you're building a dashboard. You know what questions you need to answer for your users, and you've built a low-fidelity mockup that outlines your plans for what charts you'll make. Plus, you've identified the appropriate tools to use. Now, it's time for the next step, designing the visualizations. In upcoming lessons, you're going to have the opportunity to practice creating charts and dashboards yourself. You'll start by delving deeper into the trade-offs you must consider while building BI visualizations. Then, you'll apply design best practices and your BI knowledge to create a chart in Tableau. Once you complete your chart, you'll explore effective ways to organize elements within a dashboard. You'll use your design skills yet again, but on a larger scale. And because a major part of the BI role includes maintenance and iteration, you'll learn how to make changes as the business needs evolve. This is the order that we'll use to learn about dashboard design during this section, but it isn't the only way. You might prefer to plan high-level dashboard organization before getting specific with charts. That's okay. Everyone's design process is different. Personally, I've learned that you rarely design the perfect dashboard on the first try. Sharing your ideas with stakeholders as soon as possible is a great way to get feedback, continue learning about the BI goal, and ensure you don't waste effort focusing on the wrong problems. The next few lessons will help prepare you to apply what you're learning to a realistic business situation, which you'll do later in this course. I hope you're as excited as I am to start building dashboards. Let's do it. When planning a dashboard, an essential part of your job as a BI analyst is determining how to represent data in the most effective way. Along the way, you will often have to make some tough decisions. Many of these take the form of trade-offs. In BI, a trade-off involves balancing various factors, often by prioritizing one element while sacrificing another in order to arrive at the best possible result. You witnessed an example of this in the international sales chart from a previous lesson. In this view of the chart, the data is set at a yearly timescale. Each column represents a year, and the height of the bars represent the total sales for that year. But dashboards are flexible and can be changed to present the same data in different ways. For example, you can modify the filter setting to a quarterly timescale. Now, there are several additional bars displaying more information on a single screen. Notice that a yearly timescale is more condensed, so it's more difficult to interpret what happens throughout the year. But the data that is available is simple and easy to follow because it isn't as dense. Either way, selecting appropriate trade-offs depends on the ultimate business goals. For example, if stakeholders want to know the company's total yearly sales in a specific region for 2019, the yearly timescale chart provides the clearest answer. However, if their question involves identifying which quarter achieved the highest sales over the last few years, then the quarterly timescale chart is best. Sometimes, a trade-off can be more complex. Suppose your stakeholder wants to separate the data by country again, but they also mention that the dashboard is updating too slowly. In this scenario, the trade-off in question is that the user wants the dashboard to do more faster, something that's challenging, if not impossible. To arrive at the best possible solution, you might consider speeding up the dashboard by pre-aggregating your data with SQL. As you have learned from the Google Data Analytics cert, aggregation is the process of collecting or gathering many separate pieces into a whole. So, pre-aggregation is a term BI professionals use to describe the process of performing calculations on the data while it's still in the database. This means reducing the number of rows or the size of the dataset before it's used in analysis or a dashboard. Think of it this way. If you pre-aggregate the data, it will be in a state that's closer to what you ultimately need. This is because some of the necessary calculations will happen before the data is aggregated in the database and sent to the data visualization tool. And that's the trade-off. Your pipeline will involve more steps, but your users will get to the information they need more quickly. On the other hand, if you choose to calculate all of the data once it's in the data viz tool, this eliminates aggregation from the build process. The trade-off here is that your pipeline will involve fewer steps, but your users may experience slower results. It's also possible to pre-aggregate only some of the data, then calculate the remainder after it's imported to the data viz platform. Again, it's all about considering the stakeholder needs, then balancing the different factors and choosing which element to prioritize. Also, note that pre-aggregation comes with another cost. Pre-aggregated data is less flexible. Imagine that another stakeholder wants to represent sales data by store size. If you had already used pre-aggregation to combine the data by region, thereby putting all stores together no matter their size, you'd have a problem. How you go about solving this problem will, once again, depend on the situation. If the speed issue can be solved with other methods, or you're completely sure flexibility won't be necessary, you can make the trade-off and prioritize either speed or flexibility. The best solution isn't always clear. Sometimes you'll need to get creative. That's one of the most exciting parts of being a BI professional, finding a creative solution to a difficult problem. In this lesson, we're going to start creating a BI chart. If you'd like, open Tableau Desktop or Public to follow along with these steps. This is completely optional, but it will help you get used to the interface. We'll begin by going to Sheet 1 of the workbook and accessing the chart building interface. Then, we'll navigate to the dimensions and measures of your data. Dimensions in data visualization are qualitative data types that can be used to categorize data. Some examples of dimensions include names such as customer names, product names, or locations. Measures are quantitative data types that can be either discrete or continuous. In the Google Data Analytics Certificate, discrete and continuous data types are explained in detail. If you'd like to review those lessons, go ahead and do so. As a quick refresher, discrete data has a limited number of values, and continuous data can have almost any numeric value. For instance, the number of students in a class is discrete data. This is because the class roster is finite, and it's impossible to have a value of, say, 1.5 students. But measures of continuous data have an infinite set of values that contain intervals within each value. Temperature is continuous data because it could potentially be infinite, and it can have any numeric value. In data viz, dimensions and measures are the important, trackable elements to be represented. One of the many decisions you'll make as a BI professional is how to encode these dimensions and measures. In BI, encoding describes the process of translating dimensions and measures into visual representations of the data. With Tableau, we can drag a dimension or measure of a dataset to one of the encoding types in the Marks dropdown. Using the previous example, our add type dimension might be encoded with color. This means that lines for each type of ad, such as a 15-second skippable ad, will be represented by a different color. If we encode this dimension in a different way, it will change how the chart is interpreted. Here's the same dimension encoded with line thickness instead of color. Even with the legend to explain what each line represents, it isn't as easy to understand the data. Encoding brings up another situation where you might have to make a trade-off. Color is a commonly used type of encoding. For many people, it's an easy way to distinguish information. However, people with color blindness may not find certain types of color encoding very helpful. BI professionals often refer to guidelines that explain accessible palettes. Also, in this instance, we can consider double encoding the add type dimension. For example, we can encode it with color and labels. The labels also specify the add types, making our visualization clearer and more accessible. But this creates yet another trade-off. Because we're using labels to represent add type, we have more visual elements in the chart. If you have too many visual elements, the chart might be difficult to understand. However, in this instance, the added visual elements don't create too much clutter. This is a smart trade-off to make because accessibility is such a crucial part of building an effective visualization. Making a trade-off that prioritizes accessibility is a design best practice. You might have to make other kinds of trade-offs while you encode the data in your visualizations. When this happens, always refer back to your business question and stakeholder needs. With these building blocks, you can now represent all sorts of BI data in a chart. Soon, we'll expand on chart basics and you'll build your own chart from BI data. Stay tuned. Recently, you've been learning how to design charts in Tableau. Now, it's time for the next step, organizing a dashboard. In this video, you'll shift your focus from the details of a single chart to design approaches for an entire dashboard. You'll learn many of the same design principles, but on a larger scale. In Tableau, organizing your charts, sometimes called worksheets, into a dashboard is fairly simple. Let's check it out. To create a new dash, we'll drag the relevant charts to the Center Dashboard Design interface. Once the charts are placed onto the dashboard, we'll rearrange them in a configuration that best suits the stakeholder needs. Suppose that stakeholders at a university want to expand the course offerings to cater to the demand of prospective students. So, the administration asks for a dashboard tracking the most popular courses each term. We want to place the chart that tracks popular courses at the top because it's the most important chart and the most relevant. But we might also want to include a chart that displays more general admissions data, as well as one that shows the popularity of courses from other nearby universities. This will enable us to monitor the education landscape. Where might we put these charts? Some of these placement decisions may have already been made during the mock-up planning stage. Make sure to reference the low-fidelity drafts when building visualizations. Also, consider previous discussions with stakeholders about their needs and relevant metrics and KPIs. Okay, now there are many other elements that can be included in a dashboard, such as titles, labels, a legend, and a navigation bar to help direct users. The Google Data Analytics Certificate has lots of lessons about this, so feel free to do a quick review. We can also include links to web pages or internal documents that a stakeholder may want to reference. Once we have an idea of the dashboard elements, it's time to apply design best practices. You've already reviewed several of them earlier in this section. While we should make sure to use each of the best design practices at our disposal, a few of them will be particularly helpful for building BI dashboards that don't overwhelm the audience. One of these practices is prioritization and hierarchy. If we have a visualization tracking data that is highly relevant to the stakeholder's question, we can emphasize it visually. Do this by increasing its size compared to other visualizations. A larger chart naturally draws more attention than a smaller one. Also, use color and negative space to highlight important elements. Colors with more contrast are more likely to get noticed, and negative space can emphasize an element within empty surroundings. Grouping objects that share a topic or tell a story helps ensure that our dashboard has a logical flow. For example, we might keep financial data in a single place rather than dispersed throughout the dash. Then, we can put time-related data in another area. Another helpful design tip is to hide objects. It might sound counterintuitive to create a visualization and then hide it, but we can organize visualizations on multiple pages or place them within drop-down menus that hide parts of the dashboard from the main screen. By hiding some elements, we can spotlight others, avoid clutter without deleting content, and even increase processing speed. You'll learn more about that soon. One final point. Don't group objects based on chart type. Putting all of the bar charts together simply because they're bar charts isn't a useful practice. Instead, organize by topic or metric. Soon, you'll get an opportunity to apply these design practices and build your own dashboards. Can't wait. As you know, delivering a dashboard to your clients is not the end of your role in a project. BI involves a lot of iteration, often based on stakeholder feedback, in order to get closer and closer to the ideal end state. Users might share comments about your aesthetic choices or your design approach. Or, as we've explored in many examples, clients may have feedback about access and privacy, as well as processing speed. Speed is critical in BI, so let's begin by identifying some common causes of slow processing speed and learn how to fix them. You've probably figured out that processing speed describes how quickly a program can update and load a specific amount of data. If the load is too high, then processing speeds will be slow, and the tool might even crash. This can make it difficult or frustrating to work with a dashboard. Of course, the greatest contributors to high loads and slow processing speeds are the volume of data and the number of measures and dimensions included. Naturally, the more data, the greater the volume of information being processed and visualized at a given moment. Also, the number of tabs in a dash can affect processing speed. If there are several tabs, you can better organize your visualizations. However, having too many tabs may slow things down. Yet another BI trade-off. Begin considering how to reduce load and increase processing speed at the start of your planning. As a rule, you should begin broadly, then narrow your scope. In other words, identify the priority KPIs, then consider and refine supporting information. Along the way, you might find that a metric you were originally asked to track is no longer relevant to your stakeholder's business question. In this case, you can remove it from your dashboard, which will help things move more quickly. In addition, you can optimize processing speeds by changing the calculations in your database. This enhances dashboard efficiency because back-end servers are more powerful than front-end servers and can process more data faster. However, if a calculation is dependent on the filters applied in its dashboard, then it can only be completed within the dashboard itself. This is an uncommon situation for entry-level BI professionals, but one that's important to be aware of. Configuring the amount of data that is preloaded in the dashboard can also be a good solution. Preload less data, and there will be less strain on the dash. But keep in mind that preloading may mean that the insights aren't as current as they could be. Other strategies for speeding up your dash include filtering data early on and pre-aggregation. You learned about that earlier in this section. Okay, now let's turn our attention to another important part of the dashboard iteration process: privacy. As you know, a dashboard may be used by many stakeholders within a company. Often, certain data is available to some people, but others don't have permission to access it. as a BI professional, configuring privacy settings is a crucial part of building and maintaining dashboards. There are several types of privacy permissions, but we're going to focus on three main levels: public availability, object level permission, and row level permission. If your dashboard is publicly available, it's accessible to anyone. Use this unrestricted setting to share a dashboard with the general public. The next is object level permission. This privacy setting controls the availability of a single item, such as a table, dataset, or single visualization. You'll probably employ object level permissions the most, due to their simplicity. If you give a user access to an object, revoking that access is as easy as removing their permission. The third permission type is row level. Row level permission is a privacy setting that controls the availability of specific rows of a table or dataset. This type of privacy setting is a bit more complex because it must be set up in the database rather than the visualization tool. Configuring complex permissions, where data from several sources is selectively available to different groups, is something that even some experienced professionals find difficult. You likely won't need to understand every detail about permissions when starting out in BI. You may even be on a team with a data engineer who will work with you to configure permissions. For now, you've learned some important fundamentals about iterating dashboards based on stakeholder feedback. Next, you'll get the opportunity to continue applying this knowledge to your own dashboards. I hope you're as excited as I am. Congrats on completing this section. You're really making excellent progress. You've learned more about the trade-offs involved in building a dashboard and how they affect data visualization. By understanding these trade-offs and making the right decisions about them, you can answer your stakeholders' questions more efficiently. You also explored how to design a BI chart. This lesson expanded on your prior data viz experience by focusing on flexibility and interactivity. Once again, you learned about the kinds of trade-offs you might make while encoding your data's dimensions and measures. Next, you organized charts and other BI viz elements into a dashboard. You considered how to apply these design best practices to make clear and concise dashboards that effectively answer business questions. And you delved into the impact of processing speed and how it contributes to usability and responsiveness. You also investigated the different privacy permissions which affect how you work with your data and share it with stakeholders. Coming up, you'll get more practice creating dashboards and apply your design skills and BI experience to a realistic business scenario. But before that, you have another challenge. This was a hefty chapter with a lot of material to cover. But not to worry. If you need more time to review, you can always return to the videos, readings, activities, and practice quizzes. And of course, be sure to check out new entries from the latest glossary. When you're ready, proceed to the graded assessment. Good luck. In BI, we often don't know how long our tools and solutions will be used, so what we build must be flexible and responsive. Of course, designing dashboards that are adaptable in this way takes practice. In this section, we're going to focus on how to build dashboards that can effectively monitor data for the long term. We'll also keep practicing creating dashboards in Tableau, but this time there's a twist. You're going to apply the decision-making principles you learned about earlier to a realistic business scenario. You'll get to really envision yourself in your future role as a BI professional. This exercise will also enable you to practice identifying stakeholder needs and addressing them with your own fully functional dashboard. You'll meet with your client and use the information they provide to build relevant charts in Tableau. You'll organize the charts into a dashboard, share it with users, address their feedback, and iterate on your dash. The experience you'll gain through the upcoming exercises will help you prepare for what's coming up with your portfolio project. Now, it's time to get started. Get ready for the next big milestone in your BI journey. Creating a dashboard is a collaborative process between the BI professional and stakeholders. I like to compare it to an elaborate dance among talented partners that requires skill, communication, and practice. Coming up, you'll focus on the practice part of the dashboard dance. The next few lessons encompass a role-play exercise. Similar to past courses, you'll learn from videos, readings, activities, and quizzes. However, you're also going to take on a whole new perspective. You are a BI professional who has just been given a new project. The first video you'll encounter will be a simulated video call with your stakeholder. You won't actually interact with them, but you'll experience the basics of a typical meeting to explore BI project details. Then, you will proceed to readings or emails in this roleplay setting to get more context about the project and hints about how to proceed. These emails will be similar to the ones you receive from stakeholders and supervisors in a professional setting. All of these elements will enable you to complete activities and produce deliverables. The goal of this exercise is to practice applying your decision-making and design skills. Some of the instructions may be open-ended and require you to try out different approaches. Rather than being directed through each click to make a predetermined chart in Tableau, you'll be asked to design a chart that matches certain parameters. The guidance you receive will focus on how to meet stakeholder needs rather than how to use the program itself. You may develop something, then decide that it could be improved on or that it doesn't adequately meet expectations. That's great. You're encouraged to practice trial and error. That's a big part of BI. But you won't be completely on your own. Readings will come from your supervisor and clients who will offer clues and redirection about their expectations. Immerse yourself in the BI professional role and envision your future in this field. Explore each step at your own pace and try all kinds of different strategies as you plan, build, and iterate on your dashboard. While this exercise consists of fictional details and practice data, you'll gain some awesome business insight as you complete it. Have fun.
Hey there, and thanks for meeting with me today. Your supervisor told me that you were the one to come to if I needed a dashboard built. I appreciate you taking the time. Feel free to take notes if you like, but I'll send an email with the most important information after this call. Okay, I'll jump right into the details. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and we're trying to find trends in traffic volume on the interstate. The goal is to find out if we need to make any infrastructure changes, like adding or changing lanes, entrances, or exits. We want to have a dashboard that monitors the incoming traffic data. If we can find trends in the data, we can figure out what changes we should make. The dashboard should track a couple of key things. The most important chart will monitor the traffic volume throughout the year. It'd be great if you could organize that by year, month, week, day, and hour. It'll help us figure out where the patterns are. Another chart we'd like to have is one that compares the traffic volume to weather conditions. We want to better understand the weather's effect on traffic behavior. And finally, we want to know which holidays have the highest traffic volume. That might help us plan some infrastructure updates so we don't have any lanes blocked off when they're needed the most. I'll also be sure to share these details and the data set with you right away. You'll get the traffic volume data set that includes data collected since 2012. It should be enough to demonstrate the key trends. That's all I have for you now. Your supervisor should have the rest of the details and help you get started. Thanks again for helping out on this. Bye-bye.
Earlier in this course, you practiced creating a chart in Tableau and reviewed some design best practices. Now that you're working on a dashboard for the Minnesota Department of Transportation, you'll apply your skills to this project. You have the data, the BI planning documents, and the business requirement, which is building a dashboard using the traffic data. It'll be up to you to decide how many charts you need on your dashboard. There are 4 questions that will help you move forward successfully. Which parts of the dataset will enable you to address the business requirement? Which measures and dimensions will be represented in each chart? Which chart types and forms of encoding will be most effective? And how many charts are required? Here's an example. I recently worked on a project about Google Human Resources. The project goal was to better understand HR changes over time so processes could be optimized. For the first question, I chose to include data about active employees and turnover, team hierarchies, and recruitment in order to tell an insightful story. After that, I chose which measures and dimensions to represent in each chart. I knew that for one of my charts, I wanted counts of active employees aggregated over dimensions of both time and team hierarchy data. Once I did that, I experimented with how to encode the data to be as clear as possible. As a refresher, encoding describes the process of translating dimensions and measures into visual representations of the data. So, I asked myself which chart types and forms of encoding would be most effective. When doing this, you might discover that a certain concept is better represented with colors on a map instead of bars on a chart, or vice versa. I ended up using a variety of chart types while working on my HR project. Line charts to represent total employees over time, stacked bar charts to show employees by product area, and even waterfall charts to show how both new hiring and turnover contributed to net changes over time. Okay, the final question is, how many chart types are required? For instance, you might decide that more than one visualization is needed to answer a particular question. Or you could choose to dedicate just one chart to each. For my project, I made a point to empathize with my stakeholders. Using my knowledge of the problems they're trying to solve enabled me to select the right trade-offs between keeping the dashboard focused versus providing lots of detail. Answering these 4 key questions and drawing your mock-up will prepare you to create the best charts possible for your Minnesota Department of Transportation scenario. Then, you'll be ready to move on to the next part, when you'll design your actual dashboard. If you get stuck while building your charts, refer to the upcoming reading. This is an email from your supervisor that will help you identify the best path forward. You can also go back to the previous sections of this course to review different aspects of chart building. All right, let's use your BI knowledge and design skills to make some visualizations that will really wow your client. In the last lesson, you created charts for the dashboard you're designing for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Now, it's time to build the dashboard itself. As you've learned, it's important to apply best practices when organizing dashboard elements. This ensures they're laid out in a logical manner and that you've constructed a clear visual flow. Feel free to review the lessons about dashboard design before you continue. As a reminder, you'll want to place the most relevant visualizations at the top of the dash. Then, use hierarchy and contrast to emphasize supporting elements. And be sure to consider how to incorporate negative space between charts. You'll likely find that your dashboard design experience will depend on the choices you made in the previous activity. For example, if you created many charts to describe Minnesota's interstate traffic, then you'll have more elements to balance. This is an example of yet another trade-off. More visualizations enable you to display more data, but you risk overwhelming the client or slowing down the dash. Use your best judgment to identify the most effective outcome. It's also possible that a chart you thought you needed isn't really necessary, or that you're missing a chart that's required to answer one of the business questions. If so, simply return to the chart building phase and make the adjustments. As you know, building a dashboard is an iterative process, so you can always change direction as you progress. Just like before, if you have any trouble, refer to the reading to get hints from your supervisor. Okay, now it's time to get building. By now, you've created a dashboard to track traffic volume on the Minnesota interstate. You created charts and organized them into a powerful tool that your clients can use. You've also learned about the kinds of questions you should ask while creating a dashboard. Now, in this video, we'll explore iteration. We've covered many typical iterative improvements, including changes to aesthetics, design approaches, processing speed, privacy permissions, and many more. There are all kinds of ways to refine a dashboard during iteration. Fortunately for you, your client, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, has clearly explained their feedback on your dashboard. They've sent you an email with notes about your work. The feedback is very positive, but there's still some work to do. Turns out, another member of the team wants some new features added to the dash. It'll be up to you to figure out how to best implement them. There might be several ways to action this feedback, such as editing an existing graph or creating a new one. You may need to explore the dataset again and pre-aggregate it with SQL. Or, it's possible that their request is inappropriate for the project. If so, you'll need to be able to justify why you're unable to make the changes they've asked for. As with all feedback, keep an open mind about the stakeholders' ideas. Even when you're confident in your work, it's always possible to learn something new. Good luck on the last phase of this role-play exercise. Have fun with it. Congratulations on taking a practical, hands-on approach to a BI solution request. You've now played the role of a BI professional, applying your knowledge of dashboards and stakeholder needs to a realistic work situation. While the scenario took place within a learning environment, it contains several components that you will find in a professional setting. A stakeholder requested that you build a traffic monitoring dashboard. You took the information they shared, then considered key questions and created a mock-up to help you select your charts. Next, You created the charts, which involved evaluating the dataset and deciding what information to showcase and how. Then, it was time to organize the elements of your dashboard. Your stakeholders wanted a tool they could refer to for immediate insights, so you used your BI skills to fulfill that need. And finally, you received feedback and iterated on your dash. This involved thinking about whether the requested changes were feasible and made sense within the context of the project. Include this project in your portfolio to share with hiring managers during your job hunt. And use what you've learned along the way as you continue working on the portfolio project in this course. You're doing a great job demonstrating all of your hard work. As you're discovering, working as a business intelligence professional involves many technical skills. These include things like knowing how to identify the right data, metrics, and KPIs for a particular project, applying data modeling and pipelines to organize and move data, transforming data into a usable form, using that data to solve problems and answer questions, and making visualizations and dashboards that drive business processes and goals. But BI also requires excellent communication and presentation skills. After all, if you want your hard work to really make an impact, it's important to know how to effectively share it with others. Successful BI professionals can clearly demonstrate how the tools they create enable their clients to meet business objectives. Plus, this is also important for your career advancement. Having strong communication and presentation skills can help you excel, whether you're interviewing for a job, discussing a promotion, or asking a supervisor about a new training or educational opportunity. During the next few lessons, we're going to concentrate on these key workplace skills. They are an essential complement to all the technical knowledge that you've gained so far in this program. First, you'll explore stakeholder presentations and sharing dashboards with clients. Then, you'll shift your focus to the BI hiring process and strategies for refining your portfolio. In addition, you'll have the opportunity to update your resume for the BI field so it clearly communicates all of your new experiences. And finally, you'll review interview techniques that will help you demonstrate your skills to recruiters and hiring managers. Each of these lessons will prepare you to take your BI career to the next level. So let's get moving on your exciting professional journey. In this course, you've learned that the steps of a BI project aren't always linear. Time passes, problems change, questions are refined, there's constant evolution. And presenting and communicating about project updates is a key part of this process. If you earned your Google Data Analytics certificate, you spent a lot of time learning about presentation and communication skills. In that context, you worked on data storytelling, creating compelling slideshows, public speaking strategies, responding to feedback and questions from clients, and more. In the world of BI, the concept of presenting is a bit different. So let's begin by clarifying what's meant by presentation in BI. People often think a presentation has to happen in a conference room, but many BI presentations are simply email threads. With this in mind, going forward, think of a BI presentation as any time you communicate with stakeholders about their needs or project status. Note that this doesn't include answering questions or giving clarification about minor project details. Presentations are a bit more formal, even if they're in the form of an email. Whether your stakeholders will receive your project updates in their inboxes, on a phone call, at a meeting, or a mixture of these is something you should confirm early when verifying project scope and deadlines. And no matter which format you're using, always follow presentation and communication best practices. This includes engaging your audience by taking the time to understand their point of view. Think about their stake in the project and what they hope to gain from the data insights that you deliver. Next, be sure to prioritize the most relevant information. This means starting with high-level updates first, whether that's something about your current progress, a recent change, or your plans for next steps. Use clear, concise, and accessible language. An effective BI professional recognizes that some people will have used a dashboard before, but that's not often the case. Even though BI is a technical realm, it's wise to avoid using too much technical jargon. Explain your work as simply as possible. This is another example of the importance of empathizing with your audience. I find that it's important to tailor the words and level of detail for each particular audience. For example, I know executives with technical backgrounds who are going to want me to get deep into the details, while others just want the bottom line. Lastly, if a stakeholder shared a concern with you in the previous meeting, it's important that your next presentation describes how you address that issue. And be sure to confirm that they're satisfied with your plan going forward. The first time you present to your stakeholders will likely be when sharing your low-fidelity mockups. As you've learned, these sketches give everyone a clear idea of your design intentions, and they're essential to getting necessary feedback. Typically, you'll have an initial call or email when you ask if the idea you're presenting meets stakeholder goals. And because the mockup stage is early on in the design process, you can take in people's ideas and suggestions. Then, if necessary, easily move in a new direction before you invest hours in bringing your mockup to life on an actual dashboard. Later, you'll share your functional dashboard with your users. First and foremost, this involves explaining how to use it. Even the clearest and most intuitive dashboards deserve explanation. Here, you might provide a live demonstration, or you could create a slide deck about how to interpret the visuals and change the settings. Lastly, you're now aware that the majority of dashboards are constantly evolving tools, so they don't necessarily have a final state. Just keep presenting updates on recent changes or new opportunities that have been identified. Then, you'll be able to successfully collaborate with stakeholders and keep your dashboards as fresh and helpful as possible. Hi there, it's Terrence again. I hope you enjoyed learning about BI career resources with Christine. Now, it's time to wrap up this section and move on to your graded assessment. In your future BI role, communicating your insights and accomplishments will be an essential skill. It's important to explain to recruiters, hiring managers, coworkers, and employers how you worked on your projects. For example, you learn the value of communication and presentation skills when sharing your dashboards with stakeholders. Then, you focused on preparing for your career in BI. You learned about the hiring process and how to look for a job, then worked on your portfolio. The skills you learned while creating presentations can help you update your portfolio with your latest BI achievements. After that, you updated your resume to reflect the skills you developed during this program. And finally, you learned some interview tips to prepare you for your job search. By now, you're well on your way to start applying for jobs. You've made significant progress in this course. Congratulations. It's time to take the assessment for this section and then complete the portfolio project for this course. Once you do, you'll have a strong portfolio piece to help land a job. Great work. It's been wonderful leading you through the final part of this program. I know you're well prepared for a fantastic career. All of us have been so happy to share this journey with you and can't wait to welcome you to the world of BI.
Congratulations, you've done a great job.
Congratulations!
All that's left to do is collect your Google Business Intelligence Career Certificate, which you can display on your resume and LinkedIn profile. This certificate represents all the hard work you put into completing this program. You've accomplished a tremendous amount and shown serious dedication to the field, so stay curious. After all, the learning doesn't stop here. As you enter this new era, be sure to keep up with BI trends, connect with colleagues, keep updating your career materials. For now, take some time to celebrate your achievement. You've earned it. You just earned the Google Business Intelligence Career Certificate. This is a huge accomplishment that shows that you're invested in learning new skills for your future. Now that you're certified in business intelligence, your certificate can be displayed on job search platforms such as LinkedIn, Indeed, and Glassdoor. Also, be sure to connect with companies that are eager to hire in your field through Grow with Google's Employer Consortium. As you learned at the beginning of this program, the demand for business intelligence professionals is growing at an incredible rate. With the skills and knowledge you've gained, you can keep exploring BI jobs as you work to advance your career in this high-growth, high-impact field. Let's review all you've achieved throughout this program. You started by investigating the foundations of business intelligence. Here, you discovered the roles and functions played by BI professionals within an organization. Then, you learned about BI tools, the kinds of insights they can reveal, and the importance of context in BI projects. In the next course, you explored data modeling and how databases are designed. You learned how to create pipelines to move data where it needs to go. And you discovered optimization techniques for databases and pipeline systems to keep your team's workflow running smoothly. Finally, in this last course, you focused on building dashboards to monitor data over time. You built charts and a dashboard to answer business questions in specific scenarios, then learned how to present your work to stakeholders. And lastly, you finished your portfolio and prepared for the job interview process. It was an incredible amount of work, and it's clear that you're ready to start an exciting and rewarding career. Get out there and make an impact in the world of business intelligence.